In my last video, which was rather lengthy, I apologise in advance, or I apologise after the event I should say, I talked about how the church has a teaching, no salvation outside the Catholic Church, and it's had it forever, from the inception of the church. And the church is the Catholic Church. And Francis has subverted that in the sense that he said to Singaporean children on the Friday the 13th of September 2024 that all religions are paths to God. This is the heresy of indifferentism. And I also read from Pope Pius IX, Blessed Pope Pius IX, from Quanto Conficio Morore, and where in 1863 he said, and there was an allocution of 1854 as well, which I read from, where he said that there's no salvation outside the Catholic Church, but God won't hold it against a person who's invincibly ignorant that they are not Catholic. And I sought to reconcile the strict teaching as set out in its full-blooded beauty in Cantate Domino of Eugenius IV of 1441 at the Great Council of Florence, the Great Union Council between the Catholic Church and the schismatics of the East. And that reconciliation involves saying that God, of course, can at any time, up to the moment of death, visit a person and supernaturally acquaint them with the Catholic faith, or acquaint them with a correct understanding of the Catholic faith compared to their possibly distorted understanding of the Catholic faith, whereby they can then choose whether to become Catholic and go to heaven either directly or via purgatory, or reject Catholic faith, therefore die as non-Catholics and go to hell. Oh, by the way, for those who believe strictly that you must receive actual baptism in order to be a Catholic, then of course one will say then there would have to be a miraculous baptism by water. It would be hardly seen, but it only requires a minuscule drop, doesn't it? It only requires a molecule of water to perform the baptism, in principle. But that's a separate issue, or connected but separate issue from, because it's about whether baptism is required itself, baptism in water, or baptism of desire is sufficient. And of course one would go into a whole other realm if one starts talking about all that. But the key point is, up to the moment of death, there could be a miraculous conversion, which we might not even see if we're standing around the body of the dying person. Within their soul, they could be converting. Because that's speculation on my part, isn't it? And there may be no such eventuality. However, what I neglected to do was to read an extract from Sister Faustina's diary. And those who know about the Divine Mercy devotion, it's a major devotion in the Catholic Church, because Pope John Paul II, who took it from its kind of dark place of obscurity and general kind of suspicious feelings about it, because her writings, like the writings of that I promote heavily, those of Maria Valtorta, were on the index of forbidden books. But John Paul II took this Polish nun's writings and had them fully evaluated. And now, the first Sunday after Easter is the Feast of Divine Mercy, so that's a major date to have a feast. So here's what she says from her diary. And it's number 1698. 1698. Here's what she says. I often attend upon the dying, and through entreaties obtain for them trust in God's mercy. And I implore God for an abundance of divine grace, which is always victorious. God's mercy sometimes touches the sinner at the last moment, in a wondrous and mysterious way. Outwardly, it seems as if everything were lost. But it is not so. The soul, illumined by a ray of God's powerful final grace, turns to God in the last moment with such a power of love that in an instant it receives from God forgiveness of sin and punishment. While outwardly, it shows no sign either of repentance or of contrition, because souls at that stage no longer react to external things. Oh, how beyond comprehension is God's mercy. But horror. There are also souls who voluntarily and consciously reject and scorn this grace. Although a person is at the point of death, the merciful God gives the soul that interior vivid moment, so that if the soul is willing, it has the possibility of returning to God. But sometimes the obduracy in souls is so great that consciously they choose hell. They thus make useless all the prayers that other souls offer to God for them, and even the efforts of God himself. This supports what I'm saying. Here, she's not specifically saying a person who's a non-Catholic or a Catholic. It's simply that a soul at the last moment can receive forgiveness of sin and punishment, and we don't even know it, because it all happens interiorly, silently. But of course, it doesn't preclude non-Catholics. And it would make sense to say that if this is going on, if Sister Faustina is becoming aware that this was happening, then this will be happening in other parts of the world to upright souls, the ones whom Pius IX said were leading upright lives. And he speaks of the divine mercy and grace that can illuminate them. So I think there's good reason to believe that although the dogma, no salvation outside the church, is rock solid, ironclad, cannot be changed, it does not mean that all those who apparently die as non-Catholics are damned, for the simple reason that they can turn to God even at the last moments of life. And turning to God, by the way, is renouncing all falsehood of life in all kinds of respects, but just focusing on this particular religious aspect means that all religions that are not Catholic or contradict Catholicism are false. So turning to God means turning to the Catholic faith which God gave us. It is like the shape of the soul, the Catholic faith. It's what we're meant for. It's meant for us. And so it seems pretty clear, if one accepts that Sister Faustina was a seer, and it's pretty much difficult to deny that, given that we have an official worldwide church feast relating to her visions of the divine mercy and her the messages she received from Christ, then it seems pretty clear that we can have confidence that those who apparently die Catholics don't necessarily die Catholics. So, I should say again, we can have reasonable confidence that those who apparently die non-Catholics don't in fact necessarily die non-Catholics, and in fact may well die as Catholics. Even rogues, even villains. So, in the end though, we have to say, don't play with God, don't roll the dice, don't go down the supernatural casino. Become a Catholic now. Get your deposit paid in this life so that you can draw on the balance, on the bank balance in the next life, so to speak. Secure your position now. Become Catholic in your conscious mind now, while there's time. Heaven knows the world's going crazy. We don't know when our last moment will be. So, choose the faith, the Holy Catholic faith. The faith which is built upon Jesus Christ, who appointed Peter as his chief minister, his prime minister. As in the book of Isaiah, the kingdom of Israel had its prime minister appointed by its king. This new kingdom of Israel, the Catholic Church, that replaced old Israel, has its prime minister, the Pope, the office of prime minister, the papacy, and it will endure till Christ returns. Just wanted to clarify that. Just wanted to get any confusion cleared up.